What if the key to successful change wasn't getting lots of people on board, but actually stirring things up and creating more conflict? I know, that does not sound right. But wait until you hear Liane Davey explain her big idea about the good fight. Most change initiatives fail because we avoid tension rather than harnessing it. Today, we're going to be digging into why you should be creating obligations in other people to disagree with you. And if you're conflict adverse, like I am, then this episode is going to shift entirely how you approach your next change project. I'm Michael Bungay-Stenya, and this is Change Signal, the podcast where we cut through the blather and the BS and the noise to find the good stuff that works in change management. Most of these Change Signal conversations I have from the comfort of my small studio in Toronto, and it's lovely. But when I bump into brilliant people in the wild, and in this case, in a resort in Arizona, well, I am certainly not going to miss an opportunity. I think you're going to find this a fantastic conversation with Dr. Liane Davey. She's a really good friend of mine. She's also an author of one of my favorite books, The Good Fight. What on earth is a good fight? Well, you're going to find out soon enough. I do think it's a fundamental skill that will help you as a change leader. And keep an ear out for Chrissy, our very keen waitress. Liane starts by introducing herself.
So I'm an organizational psychologist who specializes in the messy people stuff because I am on this planet to help people achieve amazing things together.
So we're at a conference together with fellow people in the world of learning and development. So there's a bit of kind of background noise, ambience, as you like to say it. And I've grabbed you because I love your thinking. I love the way that you show up. I know you, or I think of you primarily as based around your book, The Good Fight. What's that book about?
That book is about how to use conflict as a force for good in the world.
So if I'm a change leader, I just feel like conflict's going to show up because I'm disrupting the status quo. There's a whole bunch of people who don't want that. I'm playing the politics up and down and sideways. Everybody hates me. That may be overstating it a little bit, but...
Or not.
There's not many people going, you know what I'm looking forward to? The change that this change leader is about to enforce. If I'm that change leader, how would you coach me? Where would I start to think about conflict? Particularly as somebody who, like me, truly a little bit conflict averse.
Yeah. So I want you to think about conflict in two ways. So first of all, I want you to stop thinking about discomfort as the measure of whether this is healthy or not.
Okay.
And I think with conflict, it's like, this is uncomfortable, so it must be bad, right? So we need to deprogram, deprogram that. And now I want you to think about two versions of discomfort. One that as a change leader, your job is to create more of, and one as a change leader, your job is to create less of. Okay, so let's take two kinds of discomfort.
Okay.
One, the healthy kind, tension.
Yeah.
And metaphorically, you and I love a metaphor. Metaphorically, it hurts. It hurts a lot, but it hurts like yoga.
Right.
It hurts, and this is stretching me, does my foot go there? Like, is this doable? But as you're in that stretch of having to look at an issue from a different angle or whatever else, you're becoming stronger, you're becoming more agile, you're becoming future-proof. So as a change leader, I will tell you, there is way too little of that kind of conflict in our organizations, and your job is to poke it, foster it, nurture it, create it, trigger it. So lots of tension.
Okay, before we go into the other side, how do I begin to build capacity for that?
Yeah.
Because I can nod my head about that in theory. In theory, I am so with you.
Yeah.
In practice, it still makes me nervous. So how do I just get a little better at being in that moment?
Yep. You focus on three questions. So 3 questions to ask any party to a deliberation or a change. 1, what is the unique value the organization is counting on you to bring to this conversation? Okay, what's your superpower? What are you paying attention to that nobody else is paying attention to? That will start to unlock, because people are okay with saying, like, I have this expertise, or I'm paying it. That's a safe question.
Yeah.
Second question, who that isn't in this conversation is counting on you to advocate for them.
Nice.
And then all of a sudden people are not having conflict because they're pains in the butt.
Right.
They're having conflict because they have people that they need to be thinking of and they're counting on them. So now it's an obligation.
You're helping them
Yes.
become a hero.
You're making them a hero.
You're going to champion these people.
Yes.
I need you to champion them like a lawyer would.
They're counting on you.
Yeah, they're counting on you.
Yep.
So give me your best shot about telling me what the people who are counting on you, what I need to know.
What do I need to know?
Yeah,
what do I
love
need
that.
to hear, right?
Yeah.
And then the third question, all that wraps up into, so what are you obliged? What tension are you obliged? So one of the things I hate in this, sorry, I shouldn't say hate, but
No,
one
I
of the
love
things
it.
that
I love
really
the emphasis on it.
annoys
Yeah,
me
yeah.
is often in these change situations, you'll hear somebody say, look, everybody has permission to disagree here. Right? I'm like, permission? Look, I remember giving my kid permission to run cross country. And a week later finding the permission form soggy in the bag. Because we don't, like, thanks for giving me permission to do something I really don't want to
Exactly.
do. We cannot give people permission in a change to disagree. We need to give them an obligation to disagree.
Right.
So the third question, what are you obliged? What tension are you obliged to put on all of our deliberations? So what you're doing is you're setting up that, look, your job in coming into this situation is to be uncomfortable, but because there's something you're fighting for and someone you're fighting for,
Right.
then all of a sudden you have your cape on. You're like, oh, I'm in this meeting because somebody's counting on me. So that, as a change leader, the vast majority of organizations I go into, like 99%, there is too little conflict, not too much. And you are supposed to create the forums and the places to have that struggle between incompatible and opposing needs, wishes, and demands. That's a definition of conflict. That's your job, to create the forums and to facilitate that conversation. So each of those people, what they're fighting for and who they're fighting for, it comes to the optimal path forward. Not a perfect one, but an optimal one. That's your job as a change leader, period.
How do I understand
Are you
that?
still doing the interview?
Yeah, we are.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
That's all right.
Okay.
How do I? Part of my anxiety, even if you frame it as an obligation, even as I'm championing people, when you invite me into that conversation, I might lose.
Yes.
I might tell you what I want or what my people want, and I might not get it.
Right.
How do I help people navigate the fact that there's now something at risk?
So first of all, framing it as loss means you framed their role incorrectly.
Right.
So, let me give you a stupid metaphor, but it'll help, I think. So I always say the biggest problem in team effectiveness is all our language and metaphor of team is rowers.
Right.
And first of all, could we pick a more like white privilege, like crazy, uninclusive metaphor? But anyway, but it also is like nobody rock the boat and everybody pull in the same direction. I'm like, oh, thanks. That's so not helpful. So I introduced another metaphor that came from my own family life, which is we took the kids camping when they were little, and long story short, a giant rainstorm came. And we went to buy a plastic tarp in hopes of staying dry at night. Yeah. And all that was left was a sad tarp that was way too small. and so we tied the 4 ropes in the 4 corners, and we had to do 2 things, right? Pull it as hard, each of our ropes as hard as we could to make it taut so the rain would, and by this point it's raining at this like angle because it's windy. And our second job was to, like, given the conditions, kind of optimize the placement and the angle. And of course, this was the moment when my husband decides he's going to show what a man he is.
Craig,
and he pulls, bless you, Craig. He pulls so hard that he's on the diagonal from the 5-year-old. And she lands face down in the mud.
Outstanding.
And I have to like clean her up. And by the time I get her cleaned up and the 3 of us are pulling again, the 9-year-old is so fed up that she lets go of the rope and it comes flying up. And that part of the tent is getting soaked.
Right.
So I share that story, and I actually have teams go through and answer those 3 questions. What's your unique value? Who's your stakeholder? And what's your tension? Using this metaphor of what rope are you pulling? And the reason I do it is I say, now is your job to pull your rope as far as you can? Is that you winning? Because I promise you're sleeping in the puddle tonight if that's what you think, because your job is to make sure that your tension is balanced with the other tensions.
Right.
You're not supposed to rip the rope out of the corner of the tarp. You're not supposed to pull the whole tarp right off center.
Yeah.
So the problem is we've framed it wrong. And of course our measures and our bonuses and all of that tends to also drive the wrong behavior. And the behavior that we drive is to try and like pull our rope as far as we can to prove how great we are at compliance or risk or engineering. And so when we do this with teams, and I encourage every change manager to do this with their teams, have this conversation, then we go back to, look, your job is to make sure everybody's sleeping in the tent, which is your customers, your shareholders, your employees, make sure they're dry tonight. We all sleep in the tent. And once we kind of get that, then I'm not failing if the ultimate answer was something different than what I thought, because everybody in the tent is staying dry. And there are hard decisions in change, because I promise you the tarp is never big enough. And the person who owns the decision has to say, we're going to put the tarp a little bit this way and our feet might get a little wet, but at least it's just our feet. And we're going to put our backpacks at the top. And so that's key.
Part of what I like about this is it's like, here's a tent, but the vision is we sleep dry tonight.
We sleep dry tonight.
And so there's this way of framing an outcome, which is if we get this right, we all win.
Exactly.
And you're now giving me some vested interest in getting this right, rather than just pulling the rope as hard as I can.
We all sleep in the tent. And of course, one of the problems in any change, in any enterprise level change, is at some point, halfway through the change, the winds shift. And you're like, okay, we were optimizing this decision based on this set of circumstances, and so, you know, I may need to pull harder now because of something that's different, and I might need to leave a little slack on my side, even though I felt like I was winning before. But again, if the goal is sleep dry, then I am winning by being a part of a system that keeps everybody dry, as opposed to I'm the one who pulled the rope so that the tarp is over in the parking lot, nowhere near the tent, right?
Okay, so that's a really clear invitation to say, as a change leader, there's a way that you're inviting people to feel an obligation to represent their people, which will inherently bring up a conflicting conversation in all the best ways, because you're creating tension. But you said there's a type of conflict to avoid as well. What's that?
So if we go back to all conflict is uncomfortable, some is yoga uncomfortable, some is blister uncomfortable. And there is nothing good about a blister, right? It slows you down. It makes you just want to give up and go home. And that kind of friction is when there's no listening, when it becomes personal, when someone ties their rope to a tree and sits in a lawn chair, right? Just like, this is my position and I'm not changing anything. So what you're trying to do as a change leader is provoke, trigger, foster, create a forum for tension, the healthy kind of conflict, and be actively managing the friction to make sure. So you're often having to broker into a conversation because people didn't hear each other. You know, do you feel like what Michael just said represented what you intended? If not, let's go back, try again. So you're trying at all points to reduce the friction so that you can keep the conversation focused on the tension.
What skills should I build up to be a person who minimizes blistering moments?
So being an amazing listener, and I talk about level 3 listening, which is really hard. It's kind of like meditation as a lifelong practice. So level 1, the Chinese character for listen is made up of the character for the ears, the eyes, and the heart. So the first thing is, am I listening with all 3? And how do I teach everybody in the room? So close the laptops, get rid of the phones. How do we actually, because we also need to listen with our eyes, because of course so much is coming through body language, not just, so that's the first level. Second level, how do you listen to them, not you? Really hard, because of course our narrator starts going anytime somebody else is talking, and people kind of understand that, you know, my narrator's judging, like that's a really terrible point, or defending. I don't do that. But what they really hate is when I say, but sometimes your narrator's identifying. And even when you're identifying or empathizing, you start telling your own story, not listening to them. So second level of listening, listen to them, not you.
All the way over there.
Yeah, all the way over there.
Even though you're right next to each other like you and I are, it's like such a big distance to get over to the other person.
It is, right? And then the third level of listening, of course, is in a change. I say in the good fight, facts don't solve fights.
No.
And so listening to the facts...
They wind people up and they exacerbate the experience, but they do not solve fights.
So I talk about it this way. If the dragon is breathing fire, it's because they're protecting treasure.
Yeah.
And what we tend to do is when the dragon breathes fire, that is their emotional or whatever, it's heating up, we start to put bricks of facts in a wall in between us. Like, well, this report says this and this stat this, and it does nothing for the dragon.
Yeah.
Right? It just builds a wall. And so instead...
And doesn't get you any closer to the treasure either.
No closer.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is another skill is what I call open drawbridge questions.
Okay.
So how do you learn to ask questions to get the dragon to open the drawbridge and then draw you the treasure map?
Okay.
Because if you can figure out what the treasure is, and of course, as a change leader, you will be experiencing every kind of treasure. This is what I know. This is what I've been good at before. This is what my bonus is tied to. Yeah. This is a customer relationship that is 20 years old, and I don't want to give it to somebody else, right? There's all manner of treasure. But the skill is, how do I learn to ask open drawbridge questions so they will lead me to the treasure? And then if I can show them that I understand what their treasure is, I care that that's their treasure, I will protect their treasure as we build the roads around the castle. Yeah. So that's a huge skill. So, those listening ones, so the third level of listening is listening not to facts and information and not even to feelings and emotions. I think sometimes we think the feelings or emotions are the issue.
Right.
He's very angry. I'm like, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's just the fire.
Yeah.
What's the treasure? So I would say if you could pick one, pick level 3 listening. And that is, I have to practice that and recommit to that on an hourly basis.
Yeah, exactly. Liane, this has been so good. Tell us again the name of your book.
Yeah, so The Good Fight. Use conflict to help you get your team and your organization back on track. Everything else that Liane Davey.
I was there at the book launch. I remember
you
that.
You were. That was such a wonderful night. And I think it's because people were so shocked at this notion that conflict could be a force for good in the world. But conflict is one of the ultimate forces to create the kind of change that you are all trying to create. So don't shy away from it. Just, we want yoga conflict, not blister conflict.
You also have a great website and a really great YouTube channel as well. You post a weekly video. Where can they find you there? Yeah, so lianedavey.com. The website now has 800 searchable references, all sorted by category and by type of person. And then the YouTube channel is Dr. Liane Davey. Liane, thank you. My pleasure. Thank you. Liane is such a force. What a treat that conversation was. I'd really encourage you to follow her on LinkedIn and also at lianedavey.com. She puts out brilliant content now, but she's also working on a new book, which I can tell you is going to be fantastic. We spent an hour after this chat was done talking it through, brainstorming ideas, and honestly, I can't wait to read it. So, from that conversation, who then are you willing to call into conflict with you? It's such a brilliantly counterintuitive idea. Seek out those good fights. Make people the champions of the people that they lead and represent and different perspectives so you can figure stuff out. What you're doing is you are surfacing resistance and you are building allies. And thank you for being an ally of this podcast. If you've got questions or opinions or ideas or feedback, please let me know. You can email me at podcast@thechangesignal.com. And if you're willing to give this a review, or better still, tell a fellow change person in your life that they should listen, well, I would certainly appreciate that. I am in your corner. Thanks for being here.